So, I'm back. Yeah, it's kind of funny how I come back now out of all times. But we're back with the reveals for the Luard, upgrades coming out of set 12. And I'm going to be honest with you. At first, I thought this was a bit underwhelming. And then it synced in why this deck actually has some versatility now. So, let's discuss. Starting off with the grade 1, we have Drag Wizard Frogmark. Generation Break 2, Ritual 5. This unit can't be targeted by your opponent's card effects, and it gets +5. So, already pretty good on its own right. Pretty much doing what its G counterpart did back in the day. Then, if you have a grade 4 Vanguard of Ogma in its card name, when this would be retired for your cost of your card's ability, you may regard it as 2 rearguards instead of 1. Also active during the opponent's turn as well. This matters quite a bit, primarily because what this allows you to do is just simply not give a shit. So, let's say on the previous turn you call her off, like, Luard's Stride skill, and then when you go into Ogma on the follow-up, you can retire her for the Stride skill, then she'll count as, like, 2 units right there, without needing to sacrifice more, and then you can retire her again once you recall her out off from the deck off the Stride skill for Ogma's effect, which we'll go over now. So Ogma has the effect where Generation Break 3, Ritual 5, Soul Blast 1, sack 5 of your rearguards with different card names. This is very important. Your opponent chooses the same number of rearguards as the number of units you killed off for the effect, and they have to retire them. Then if you retired a total of 3 or more for the cost, you draw 1, and it gets the red text skill, where when it attacks, you could target one of your ritual ability units, rearguards specifically, and restand it. And then for each face-up copy of himself in the G-Zone, both units get +5. So both the rearguard you restood and himself. So it's kind of mirroring similarly to what the Kronos Command and the Transhouse Messiah did, where it essentially gets a little bit of a power-up off its own effect for each face-up copy. So more than likely, you'll go Driver in the first stride turn, flip him up, and then on the second follow-up, you'll go into him, and you'll get an additional +5. So it's kind of to make it a little more fair and balanced. I like this card a lot. It gives the deck a lot more versatility than it previously didn't have before. It gives a new sense of board control as well, which is very important. Because now it doesn't really matter how many cards you have face up in G-Zone. Literally, unless you know your opponent doesn't have Sanctitude, and you could just go and kill them with Drag Strider, this is honestly the best, second stride we could have asked for, realistically speaking. Because let me put this into context, right? So like I was mentioning earlier with the Frogmark, you could essentially retire her twice, basically. Once off the Stride skill, because she'll count as 2 units while you're sitting on an Ogma Vanguard, and then a second time off his own skill. And granted, you have to sack 5 different rearguards with different names, but she'll count as 2 units, so you're only realistically sacking 4 at that point, at max, to get rid of their entire board, which is pretty insane. So you get a board wipe on top of a draw, on top of a restand. That's pretty good, I would say, The only major, problem I could see, is just that initial build-up. Whether or not the +5 really will add up after a certain point, because essentially the ideal play will be go into Ogma, Stride skill to kill off the Frogmark to call a second Frogmark and some other card, right? Probably a Luminosity Wizard so you can soul charge a bit. Then you'll go Ogma effect, sack pretty much nearly your entire board, and then you'll board wipe your opponent, you'll draw 1, and then you'll have a red text skill to restand something, which preferably will be Morfessa. And the best part about this is, you really don't have to worry about not finding your Morfessas at that point, because as long as you keep the Morfessa that you called on the previous turn alive for this specific follow-up, you're still going to be able to go into the double Morfessa attack combo. Well, you'll do Rearguard, Morfessa effect, call, swing with Vanguard, Ogma's effect to restand the Morfessa, swing with the other Rearguard, swing with Morfessa, Morfessa effect to call another card, and then you still get your 6 attack card combo, just with a little less setup and a little less reliant on you having specific pieces in the deck to actually proc off. So you don't have to technically search for Morfessa at that point. Because by that point, you should already have one either in hand or already on field. Usually by that point in the game state. So, like, honestly, this is really, like, because even if worst comes to worst, you can't do, like, that full combo play. You'll still do rear guard, Vanguard, restand the rear guard with the ritual ability. You'll do your drive checks, and then you still get 4 attacks that way regardless. But this is just a nice little thing to have add attacked on. Also, the fact that we can just essentially sack our opponent's board for basically near nothing is also a nice benefit. Space will be a bit tight, admittedly, for the Frogmark, but I think you can rearrange some of the grade 1s in your lineup to actually accommodate. But yeah, no, I think this is really good. I think, in general, we've been waiting for a card like this for a while. I think Luard has the potential to be really good going into this meta, because now it actually has a legitimate answer towards Shiranui. So literally, if you go second, you go into your stride turn, and then you're like, cool. Now, after you're done your whole dominate play with Maga Tenbu, guess what? I'm going to be able to sit there and wipe your board gone of all of your restanders. Meaning you're going to have to not only waste cards from hand guarding this initial assault, but you'll need extra cards in hand to actually be able to reattain that same board state that you previously had. And a lot of other decks are going to have similar issues with against this card as well. And because you don't have to pay stride cost to go into him, because Luard's, stride skill can pretty much, ritual ability basically makes it that way you don't have to stride, pay the stride cost. Yeah, that's pretty good, I would say. So, as in terms of standard implications, it's very good. However, in premium, I don't know if this is entirely all that great. Yes, you get a more consistent restand off of the, like, let's say DRAGNOA, for example, because realistically, you're not going to run the D-Series Morfessa unless you just so happen to draw into everything. But this is still a nice little, like, add-on to it, where if you have the DRAGNOA in hand, now this justifies actually running it again. Because essentially, you'll actually be able to essentially do DRAGNOA twice without having to rely on hitting a stand trigger. And I think that's really important. But at the same time, I see another implication, more not even necessarily with this version of Ogma, but specifically with the original Ogma. Because the original Ogma forces your opponent to discard, and that matters a bit because in a really insane high roll chance, let's say you got 4 Frogmark on board, you go Ogma effect, sack my entire board of Frogmarks. Well, guess what? Not only are you going to be ripping cards from out of their hand, but also they're feared at the same time, and that really matters a bit. I meant to say it the other way, but you get the picture. Because it doesn't specify they have to be different names, they could be literally anything. You could essentially just call a full field of Frogmarks, activate Ogma's effect, wipe away all the Frogmarks, and now they have to get rid of 8 cards. That is insane. Granted, against Excel decks, it wouldn't necessarily be all that great, but honestly, it wouldn't be too bad of a removal tool, really. This kind of actually replaces Crow Crunch in most Luard builds in general now, because essentially what ends up happening is Morfessa first turn stride is like, okay, whatever, or you G-guard maybe twice, sake of argument, right? And then you go into this guy, and then effect the OG version of him. And yes, you are not going to be able to get the restanding, but that's a small price to pay, honestly. Like, I can actually see a build for premium, specifically on the board control, where you'll run like 2 copies of this version, and maybe like 2 copies of the OG version, and you'll hand rip them until you get to a point where you're ready to kill them with this version of the card, or Morfessa, and just win the game off that. So I think there's actually room for a little bit of like a board control sense in Luard now, where I think there is a way to make Ogma work now a bit better than what, was previously established. So, I don't know. I'm gonna have to, like, sit here and actually take a crack at this, because I think there is a way to make Ogma really good in premium now. But whether or not it's gonna replace Morfessa, it's not. I'm just gonna tell you that right now. It's not replacing Morfessa, but it's a nice extra tool. And I think this might actually just end up, like, being a nice additional, like, 1 or 2 of on average. Now Ogma has a legitimate place in the deck, regardless of which version. So, let me know your takes on this in the comments section. Do you think I'm right on the money with Ogma, or do you think there's something else I'm missing that that can be kind of comboed along with it? Let me know in the comments section. Until next time, this is Noah, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye, everyone.